I'm Stephen J. Abramson, and today is April 15th, 2011. Today I have the great pleasure and honor to interview the gifted Debbie Allen, who is right here. And this is for the Archive of American Television, and we are at the Debbie Allen Dance Academy in Los Angeles, California. So we'll start at the very beginning. What was your name at birth?
Deborah K. Allen is my birth name, Deborrah. And born in Houston, Texas. And
When were you born?
I was born in Houston, Texas on January 16th, 1950.
And were you called Deborah for a long time before it became Debbie, or was it just right away the nickname, or?
I was called a lot of things. The Spiller. I had a few different nicknames. No, they always called me Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah K.
Okay.
Deborah K.
What was your father's name?
My father was a dentist, Dr. Andrew Arthur Allen.
Okay. And your mom?
My mom is Vivian Ayers Allen.
Okay. And what does she do?
My mother is a Renaissance woman. She's a poet. She's a painter. She was a concert pianist at 16. She was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for her first book of poetry in the 50s. She is the one we're trying to catch up with.
Tell me about your siblings.
I have 3 siblings. Well, actually 4. I have an older brother, Andrew Tex Allen, who's a trumpet player, musician, and composer, jazz musician. I have an older sister, Felicia Ayers Allen Rashad, who people will know her as the star of The Cosby Show. I have a baby brother, Hugh Allen, who is a banker, presently with Wells Fargo Bank. I have a half-sister, Angeline Butler, who is older than all of us. I don't know exactly how old Angeline is.
Are most of your siblings involved in the arts, except for the banker, maybe?
Everybody except for Huey. Everybody is. I think it has a lot to do with the DNA. Honestly, my mom just would see it in us and develop it, and she would fight to find opportunities for us to study and be inspired by the arts, always.
What were you interested in as a little girl?
It was dancing for me from the beginning. I think I came out dancing. And Mom just, plowed the field to get me the right classes.
How young were you when you first started?
I can remember dancing. I can remember my first costume at 4. A little white satin skirt and a triangle and some little tap shoes. I remember that.
Did you watch television when you were little?
Yes, television actually existed when I was little. It hadn't long been in existence. But actually, television had a great influence on my sense of myself. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of playing of the early musical films on television. So I was like 5 years old, 4 and 5 years old, cutting my teeth on the Busby Berkeley movies, Shirley Temple, the Nicholas Brothers, Gene Kelly, and Lena Horne. I had incredible images to kind of reflect myself in.
Did you have a favorite TV show?
Well, there was, when I came up, there were very few TV shows that, were the staple of the family.
Sure you put in the comments, what was your favorite TV show growing up?
Other than the Ed Sullivan Show. Growing up as a little kid, it was the Ed Sullivan Show, because that's where you saw everybody. You saw Richard Pryor, you saw the Beatles, you saw Margot Fontaine, Nureyev, you saw everyone, Sinatra, Sammy, you saw everybody on Ed Sullivan.
What traits would you say you inherited from your mother or father?
I've inherited a lot of traits from both of them. I think I have my father's personality. My father was a very gregarious dentist and loved people, loved entertaining, loved show business. I just loved life. My mother is also enjoys people, but not to the extent that my father did. My mother needs a little more quiet as a writer and as an artist. She's someone who is also very dynamic in terms of going the distance to excavate or discover that which she might not know, that she needs to know to do whatever it is that she's trying to do, or whatever her interest is, to develop her mind. So I'm like Mom in that way, because my mother now at her present age, 8 decades and change, is still vibrantly and intensely translating Spanish books, learning about the indigenous Americans, the Aztec, Mayan, all those Incan cultures. So I have that appetite of history a lot from her.
Does the writer side of her influence you, or has it influenced you?
Yes, the writer side of my mother has influenced me. The poet side. Mm-hmm. I've written many musicals and productions at the Kennedy Center. Written a lot of music with James Ingram, who I've collaborated with over the years. And as a child, growing up with poetry and rhythms, and we actually collated some of her first books when, we were her production team, her kids. So poetry's always been a big part of our lives, books, because of Mama. That was back in the day when you could take the tube out of the television and it would appear to be broken. She would do that frequently to get us away from what she called the idiot box, and make us go outside in nature or read a book or something else.
When did you know you wanted to dance professionally?
I wanted to dance professionally since I was 4 years old. This was just who I am, who I've always been. I wanted to replace Shirley Temple. I was sure I could do it better. I wanted to be up on that stage when I saw Katherine Dunham dancing in Stormy Weather. Watching those musical films, it was so easy to project myself into what I was seeing.
When did you get your first taste of performing in front of an audience? Was it when you were a little girl doing recitals, or?
My first performances were totally family driven. I was the entertainment for the family. They could turn on the radio or turn on music and let's have a little Debbie dance. I would dance for my grandmother. I'd dance at anybody's birthday, just upon request.
Well, did dancing, did that take up most of your time, or did you do other things too? Were you interested in other?
Oh, I did so many other things. I was voted most versatile in my high school class, and I grew up kind of like that. I was dancing. I was in poetry, speech competitions. I tried to be on the swimming team. That didn't quite work out. I finished, but I threw up after I came in like 5 minutes later after everybody else had finished. But all through high school, I was very active in school life. I was a majorette. The star football player was my boyfriend, but I was going to dance class every day.
Yeah, it's no surprise because of what it's like you've conquered so many things in life in terms of, being able to master it or be conversant in it, that kind of thing. And you're known for that. It's not like a triple threat. It's like almost like an infinite threat, I guess.
I don't know.
Tell me about moving to Mexico City. Why did you move to Mexico City with your family?
I moved to Mexico City following my mother. We were living in Texas at a time where segregation was just the way of life. And there was just there were so many barriers for us as children, barriers for her as an artist. We couldn't go to restaurants. We could go to the park, the big amusement park, one day a year on Juneteenth. She tried to enroll me in the Houston Ballet Foundation, and they were not accepting black kids. We tried to pretend I was Mexican. They still wouldn't take me. So she actually just tired of being this incredibly gifted artists whose friends were so talented and diverse as well. I mean, she had friends that were European, East Indian, Southern white. And it was, if you were riding in the car together with somebody and you were black, they might stop you. She just got tired of that. So she packed us up in boxes because we didn't even have luggage. And we moved to Mexico.
How old were you?
I was 9, turning 10.
And you were able to enroll in the National Ballet of Mexico, is that right?
Well, what happened was we went to two different schools. I went to the Pan American workshop, and yes,
Yeah.
I went to the Ballet Nacional and took class and performed with them, and it was incredible. It was so enlightening.
Packing up and moving your family to Mexico, how your life would turn out. Do you think it would be better or worse than what it is now?
For a young girl, for me and my sister Felicia, to be in another place, in a foreign land, a different language, where people embrace you in a way that they didn't embrace you in your own hometown. So that was very enlightening about being out in the world, why it would be important to do that.
So where did you go to high school?
By the time I came back to United States, I went to Jack Yates Senior High.
In Houston?
In Houston,
Okay.
Texas, yep.
Okay. What about college?
I went to Howard University. It was not my first choice. I had been rejected by a major performing arts school who basically told me that I would never be a dancer, that I should go into something else, and that I should reconsider my career. And so I went to Howard University really in default, if you will. It was where my sister was in school. It was my father's alma mater. And I was easily accepted there. And it was actually the best thing for me. It was the best thing for me.
What was your first professional job as a dancer?
My first professional job as a dancer where I got paid money. Well, I danced with the Corps de Ballet in Houston once I was finally accepted in the Houston Ballet Foundation at the age of 13. And they gave us an honorarium. It wasn't a professional salary, but it was an honorarium. And I was in the ballets. I was in the opera, Gypsy Baron. I was in the opera, Aida. I was the only one that didn't have to wear the Egyptian tan makeup.
So did you move to New York right out of college?
I moved right out of college, out of Howard University, and packed all my bags in a van and drove up to New York.
And what did you want to do when you got there?
I wanted to go to New York and dance. I wanted to be in the theater. I wanted to be in a company. My dream had always been Alvin Ailey. And I actually had gotten very close to it while I was in college. I went in the summertime to the North Carolina, to the New London Dance Festival, which is now the American Dance Festival in Spoleto. And I met the Alvin Ailey Company, and that's when I knew who I wanted to be and where I belonged in the world of dance. I was throwing away those toe shoes, honey, and wanted to put on some heels and a red tight dress. And everyone wanted me to come in the company, but he said I was too young. But I was killing Revelations and all the, excerpts of the choreography that we learned.
Was it a bit of a struggle when you moved up there? I mean, just getting sort of established?
Oh, it was a struggle. My sister lived in the Y, and I moved into the Y in a one-room with a bathroom down the hall situation with her. And I said, honey, we got to get out of here. So I made her get an apartment, and then we just pooled our money together and paid our rent. Sometimes we didn't eat. Sometimes we went hungry. It was hard. New York can be really tough, but, if you're
Willing to go to accomplish your dreams? Are you willing to go without a meal for a couple of days? How about a bath? Are you willing to travel to foreign lands? Let me know in the comments.
you can see yourself there. If you can wait it out, you might get there.
So you were nominated for a Tony for your role in West Side Story.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How did that come to you?
Well, the entire production was incredible. I actually met the casting director on the set of Fame, the movie. Joanne, I can't say her last name, but Joanne. And she said, I was actually doing my little Spanish act, because coming out of Mexico, I spoke Spanish and I had an accent, and I used to do bits and make people laugh. And so we were in the cafeteria somewhere, and I was making everyone laugh. And she said, do you think you would like to have a meeting with Leonard Bernstein? I was like, yeah, sure, hello. And by that time, I had done a bit of television and had developed myself. So they got very excited when I auditioned, and immediately he introduced me to Joan Robbins, and I got the part, and it was incredible. I didn't grow up on West Side Story like a lot of kids, because in Texas, when that movie came out in 55, 56,
Something like that.
all the movie theaters were segregated. So I didn't see West Side Story until much later. So I was excited, though, to be working with them. I knew exactly who they were, and
You played Anita, right? And
I was Anita in West Side Story.
you got a drama desk award. Is that right?
Yes, I won the Drama Desk Award.
Well, how did that feel?
That was exciting. It was exciting. It made me feel really good about my accomplishment, and made me think I might win that Tony Award, but they held it back. It's good to stay hungry. It's all good. It's all good.
When did you want to be a dancer and an actor too, or did you kind of want to do it all at that point?
I kind of wanted to do it all. I had trained at Howard University as an actress after I had been rejected by the Performing Arts School. I went to Howard University, and there I was majoring actually in classics. I was translating ancient Greek. I was one of only 2 students in the classics department class. So I was taught by Frank Snowden, Dr. Frank Snowden, who is one of the most brilliant minds in the world of antiquity and class. In fact, he wrote this incredible book called Blacks in Antiquity, and I was his student. So I was translating Homer and Aeschylus and, the great Greek writers. And then I decided, I really wanted to go into theater. Classics was going to be Latin and Greek in 6 years undergrad. And then I just started feeling I need to get back on the stage. So I transferred to the drama department, and I majored in theater arts. And there I trained as a director. I trained as an actor. I even studied lighting and set design. So Howard University gave me kind of a full package moving forward into the theater world.
What was your first television role?
Wow, my first television role, it was Good Times. I played JJ's junkie fiance. And right after that, I actually did some work on Captain Kangaroo. Captain Kangaroo was one of the funniest shows ever. I mean, it was for kids, but they did some funny sketches. And I remember playing in the circus, playing a princess, doing all these funny things. And they were kind of ready to offer me a real deal, and I was excited to do it. But then I got pulled into Hollywood.
When you were doing Good Times, were you a fan of the show?
Yeah, everybody was a fan of Good Times. It was a great show. It was family. I mean, JJ was this quirky, funny character, but the storylines were really relevant to not just the black community, but the working class people of America. It was so relevant.
Even though she just mentioned that she was JJ's junkie fiance on Good Times, I just realized that was actually her, and I've seen that many times. Let me know in the comments. Did you always know, or did you just find out yourself?
And I was actually visiting Ralph Carter, who was my co-star in the Broadway musical Raisin. And I was just visiting him, and I was actually sitting in the lobby waiting for my ride when Jane Murray, the casting director, walked past me and said, she looked at me and she says, "Can you act?" I said, "Yeah, I can." "Can you audition?" I said, "Really?" "Yeah." And so she brought me in her office, showed me some sides. I read the sides, and they cast me as JJ's junkie fiance on the spot. It was great.
What was the set like?
Opportunity back then was so much easier than it is now. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments.
Was it, I mean, it was, I guess, new to you.
It was totally new to me. I had never done a
TV set.
sitcom.
Yeah.
Never done a sitcom. So it was exciting. I was excited to be there. Everybody was so nice to me. They had seen Raisin, most of them. There was a bit of drama going on about how I was going to wear my hair so that it wasn't the same as the young girl that was his sister, same as her hair. And then they changed my hair. Then she changed her. I don't know. It was some drama. I remember some drama about my hair. But it was fun working with Jimmy because he was a big star. I mean, he was a big star at that time.
Jimmy Walker, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Walker.
Yeah.
And but I was not impressed. And I think he liked having somebody who's like, I would be like, "Honey, come on, say your lines, calm down. Yeah, not flirting with me for real. Let's stop it." And, I was really about the work. And so we actually became friends. And subsequent to that, he actually requested me to play opposite him in a movie called The Greatest Thing That Almost Happened.
And you were cast in Roots: The Next Generation, right?
I was cast as Nan, Alex Haley's wife. That was incredible.
Had you seen the original Roots?
Absolutely. Everyone had seen Roots, and it was such a great kind of trauma for the whole Hollywood scene. It created the miniseries because they had no faith in the show and they were going to dump it.
Did you feel that Roots was a depiction of real life, or did you know that it was made up?
They said, let's just get rid of it. And then it was the highest rated show in the history of television. Black people, slavery, America facing itself. And then when they did the sequel, Roots 2, I was so thrilled to be cast and to be working with Lloyd Richards, who was the incredible professor and director out of Yale Drama School. And it was the first time I ever went on a set and saw so many black people on the crew. I had never seen that before. There was a lighting director that was a black man. There was the sound man was a black man. I mean, it was incredible to feel that you really existed in a big way.
What do you think the legacy of Roots is?
The legacy of Roots is really the legacy of America. That's what it is. It is the story of who America is still becoming. It is the story when you experience, you are really finding out who America is, where she is. There have been two movements. There's the abolition of slavery and civil rights movement. And both of those movements empowered and ignited the women's movement. It spoke to the women of America to stand up. And these things that have happened here in America are speaking to people in the Middle East right now. They're encouraged by looking at America historically, knowing that things can change. So Roots is really the story of America and who she is to become.
So around 1980, you were cast in a small role in the movie Fame. And tell me the name of the character.
Well, you know what? My character was actually supposed to be a senior student who was the nemesis for Coco. I was supposed to have a big number, and I was working in Burger King, and that all got cut. And they gave me the dress. Alan Parker was shooting so much footage. He had a 10-hour movie, and he said, "Debbie, I love you, and you'd be so great, but I'm going to have to tell you, I'm going to cut your number." I'm like, okay. And so I came off as a young teacher where I really was the senior class student who was assisting the class. And I can't even remember my name.
Well, I was wondering if it was, you were Lydia in the series. Were you Lydia in the movie?
I don't think they ever said my name in the movie.
Okay. So how did you make the transition from that film to the TV series that started on NBC, I think?
Yeah, NBC.
Was that like a natural thing, or did they come back to you and say, hey, we really liked you, or what? How did that come about?
Well, what happened was, by then I had done West Side Story. I think I had already done the movie Ragtime. I think I'd done Ragtime. And they were deciding to make Fame into a television series. And they said, would you come and play the dance teacher? We want to go younger with the dance teacher. They were clear to say the show is not going to be about you and your character. It's really going to be about the kids. And I said to them, you know what? I would love to do it if you let me do the choreography. They said, oh, please, you can have the choreography. They're like,
Really? It was that?
Yeah. They paid me $2 to do the choreography. Seriously, it was like no money. My agent kept saying, why do you want to do that? I'm like, because that's what I really love. And if I can do that, I'll do the show.
So tell me about your character, Lydia Grant.
Lydia Grant was incredible. She became a universal icon of what happens in the dance class and what dance is to people around the world. She was a young woman who, a lot of her was Debbie Allen. We only saw a little part of that, but she was a woman who never leaned on her blackness, was a black woman, but was fierce in that class with the kids. And also she was the mother. Lydia Grant was the mother of that whole series. She was the Earth Mother for everybody on that show.
You have there were some kind of famous lines that you said. Do you remember what those lines are?
Oh,
the gist of them?
Famous lines from Fame. You got big dreams. You want fame. Well, fame costs. And right here is where you start paying in sweat.
You nailed it.
Well, I've never not been able to say it. I mean, I'll be in the grocery store and somebody say, oh, could you say the line? I'll be in Italy somewhere. Miss Grant, say it to us, please. They love it. It's great.
The character's name, okay.
That's right, Miss Grant.
How was the TV show different from the movie?
It went on for 6 years. That's how it's different from the movie. It was a movie that never wrapped. It was 6 years. It was an incredible journey for all of us. For me, it developed my sensibilities, sharpened my sensibilities as a choreographer, developed me as a director, mandated that I become a producer. It was like going to film school in a way, at the same time that you were doing something that you loved, and there was always so much at stake every week to week to week to week.
Did you have input as the show continued? Did you have input about your character?
I had so much input. I had a lot of input, yeah. But you know what? I only got so far. Like, for example, I was nominated for, I can't even count how many Emmy Awards I was nominated for as Best Actress. But I was never going to win. And I would tell them, I said, Cagney and Lacey are dying of breast cancer and getting raped. And I'm talking about who's dancing the lead. So there's never going to be the degree of difficulty because they never really wanted to go home with Lydia Grant. We went home with me maybe once, Leroy once. But I didn't have so much to do with the storylines. I had all to do with what happened on the dance floor in our production numbers. It was written in the script. Bill Blaine used to write DWD, Debbie Will Determine. And so I just would give them ideas all the time about how we could expand things and things to try.
There was so much at stake from week to week. Was that how it continued? Was that...
It was that way from the beginning to the end. I was there as the character Lydia Grant and also the choreographer, and soon to become the primary director, developing and really teaching those young kids. I never had a day off. On Saturdays and Sundays, they were at my house rehearsing. We only had 2 days to get those numbers together. 2 days. And there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And there was no pattern for me to follow. Bill Spencer, our cameraman, our DP, actually took me back in the editing room to show me the archives from the old MGM movies. I would write out the dance action, the lyric, how much music, and then I would write out the camera moves. And then nobody taught me how to do that. I just knew I had to communicate to everybody, this is what we're going to do. So he took me back in the editing room, and it was so much the same. It was incredible. So there was a lot at stake. I had a lot of so talented and gifted young people that were unbridled and undisciplined. In particular, my baby, Gene Anthony Ray. I was always minding him, always, till the very end with him.
Tell me a little more about the craft of choreography for television. It sounds like it just sort of came naturally to you, but what are the essential differences between something for the small screen and, let's say, stage, or even, a feature?
Well, the difference between theater and film in choreography or directing is, on the stage, lighting tells you where to look. In a movie or in television, you put the camera, you place it. You say, this is a close-up, this is a dolly shot, you're telling us all the time with the camera where we want to look. And that was something that I learned. I learned by paying attention. I was in front of the camera so much, but I was always paying attention, always. When I was in Three Girls 3, this was a big variety. This was coming, bringing variety back big time. And I will never forget them dressing me up in a Bob Mackie bejeweled harem outfit. And this camera right here in my face on a Titan crane that then just pulled all the way back as I opened my arms and unveiled and walked down the steps. And it was one big shot. It went from this extreme close-up to the massive wide shot of the entire set and the 15 men that were undulating underneath me. Oh, honey, it was fabulous. But I was paying attention the whole time. And I think my eye was also sharpened because growing up with those MGM movies as a kid, Busby Berkeley, I was paying attention. I was looking at that good old head-to-toe shot. Fred Astaire didn't do all those cuts. He and Gene Kelly, they were really doing the craft. The Nicholas were. There weren't a lot of cuts because they were hitting it. So I was influenced and informed by that. And certainly after having learned directing at Howard University, not trained as a film director, but just as a director for stage, the progression from choreography to directing was a natural, because I really was in charge of shooting those numbers. Sometimes the directors would go home because they didn't know how to shoot dance. And I'd be, oh, honey, somebody shot a watch it. Okay, that's it. I said, oh, no, honey, we got at least 10 more setups. Look, honey, go on to your trailer. I'll fix this for you. And this is when you're really an honest artist, that you're not trying to get more money for it. You're not trying to get credit for it. You just want to get it so that it's good and it's right. And developing your eye in choreography for film is about what that camera, how are we moving the camera along? What do we want to see? So I learned through choreography a lot about a functioning master. Not a master that just sits here, but a master that moves and does this and goes in and goes out.
So how long would you have to choreograph a number and teach it before you had to shoot it?
2 days was all we had on Fame to choreograph, teach, and get a number camera ready. Wow. We had that wonderful rehearsal hall. There's a picture of me, Gene Anthony Ray, Fred Astaire, and Ginger Rogers in that rehearsal hall A. That was the same room that they rehearsed in. And when they came, they were so thrilled to come back, and they loved what we were doing on Fame. They loved us, and that room was the room.
Able to step foot in the same room as your favorite actors and actresses. Let me know in the comments, who would those people be?
Rehearsal hall A. I think it's a costume room now, unfortunately, but
So was Fame shot in New York or Los Angeles?
Fame was shot here in Los Angeles, right on the MGM lot, which is now the Sony lot. And we used to do maybe 2 or 3 weeks of filming in New York. I would actually film production numbers on the streets of New York that we'd cut into it, and you would feel like we were in New York.
So a typical week was how many shooting days?
There was a 7-day shoot week on Fame. 7 days. God did it in 7 days, and we were supposed to do it too.
So how did you juggle all that? Obviously, you were very busy juggling your script, your part, choreography, and then you added on directing. Did you sleep?
I think the only way I did all of these things was it was part of my, DNA as most versatile, coming out of high school, doing many things. But I gave myself to the work. So my personal life certainly sacrificed. I ended up divorced. I worked tirelessly. But I have to say that I loved it.
How many dance numbers were in a typical episode?
There would always be at least one major dance episode in Fame and maybe 2 smaller ones. And sometimes more, but always at least 2.
Were there any particularly challenging episodes or numbers you remember that stand out?
Yeah, there was a challenging episode we did where we told the story of Othello. And it was challenging because it was so interesting to me, and having grown up the way I grew up, I certainly was ready for this little battle. I will never forget this executive coming up to me saying, we're doing Othello. You're not going to actually, they were concerned about what I was going to have Gene Anthony Ray do with Laurie Singer, that he was black and that she was white. I said, you know what? I didn't pick Othello. The writers did. But if you've read Othello, you will see that, by page 2, she's already having mad sex with him, run off, and now the army is in question. I saw his pupils dilate, honey. He was like, I was like, oh my God, we're really dealing with this. Well, it's interesting because this episode won almost everybody an Emmy Award because the work was so good. Because I said, I can do all this in Desdemona's dream. I can make this Othello's dream. The song Desdemona came out of what I said the number needed to be. I said, I need to tell a whole story. And what would happen, I would sit in on the music meetings and listen to music and pick music. And no, not that. Yes, this. It was incredible. It became one of our most favorite production numbers when I took the company on the road on our European tour.
Were all the actors dancers and singers and actors, or was there a little faking it for some of them?
All of the actors in the show were not dancers, were not singers, were not actors. We were bouncing, and we were kind of putting it together as we went along. For example, Laurie Singer was a celloist, incredible musician, but she had feet like this, and she had long legs, but dancing was not really her forte. We used it a little bit, but then it became apparent, let's let her get in the music world. Erica Gimple, she came in, she was a singer and an actress, hadn't done that much dancing, and it was a real challenge. I mean, I used to be shaking her every week. Gene Anthony Ray was everything, but just unbridled and undisciplined. And I just had to pull him in. Carlo Imparato was a great actor, wonderful comedian, great singer, and was willing to jump in and dance. Lee Carreri was really Bruno for real in his real life. He was a composer. And it was like, what? there was never even any conversation about trying to have him dance. He became an actor. He became an actor in the show. And it was all of that. Doris Schwartz, Valerie, she was very talented, just could do everything. But I spent a lot of time developing and balancing their skills, for sure.
Do you see a direct link between Fame and Glee?
Oh, yes, of course. There's a major link between Glee and Fame. It's high school, it's musical, it's teachers that you love to hate. You have young people that are going through their own personal challenges.
I've seen both Fame and Glee. Let me know in the comments, which show do you actually prefer?
In their personal lives. They're addressing issues from alcoholism to pregnancy. They get to at least deal with homosexuality, something we were not even allowed to touch on Fame, not even allowed.
As Fame became more popular, how did your life change? Were you recognizable pretty quickly?
My life changed in a very kind of nice way as Fame became so universally loved. I got off a bus in Israel and couldn't walk the streets. I mean, there were thousands of people just following us around. It was incredible. We went to London and we sold out Wembley Stadium. It's like, what? I went to Italy and Denzel Washington was with me and my husband, and they were like, Denzel, La Chica de Fama. Oh my God. It was really incredible. The demands on me personally became just greater. It was difficult. I was always working to bring everybody up. I mean, I ended up in the hospital with my first child, coming early because I was flying around with Fame, and I was 6.5 months pregnant. It was tough. It was a lot.
You mentioned that gay characters, it was like a taboo to kind of deal with that subject back then. What were some of the other restrictions and rules, the things that you couldn't, that were sort of not allowed?
Well, we had challenges about anything that was sexual. Because this is why when you say what was my influence on the stories, I said everything, but not really, because I always thought we should have had a story where Leroy fell in love with Lydia. They just were not going to let that happen. That was a natural story for him to fall in love with her. That would have been the truth. We were not allowed to deal with homosexuality, not even talk about it. There was even a question, I remember being questioned by one of the network executives, do the boys have to wear tights? And I was wondering, are we dealing with penal envy here? What they're dances, for God's sake. What are we talking about? But we were able to deal with some dynamic stories. I remember the wonderful story we did about a young prostitute that Valerie brought off the street, and that was a very powerful story. And I can even remember this production number we did, Life is a Celebration, that she witnessed that and it kind of changed her life. But we're not allowed to go very deep.
Were you ever able to sneak in some issues kind of right under their noses?
Well, I think one of the most dynamic stories we ever did was the 60s episode, where we did an episode that dealt with war and young people involved in war and protests. And Miss Sherwood, our English teacher, was going to actually have to quit because she had kind of initiated us doing a show about it, and it was creating protests. At the same time, this very charismatic, sexy, I want to say Army, I don't think he was general or what he was, but he implemented an ROTC program into our performing arts school. And then all of a sudden the boys latched onto it and they started feeling themselves. But then when it came time to pick up a gun, that's when they started going, you know what, this was fun, but now... So we did an homage. We did I picked Hair because Hair was actually the first Broadway musical I ever did see. And I never forgot it. And so we did a whole homage to
First Broadway musical that you've ever saw? Me personally, it was The Nutcracker.
what was happening with the Vietnam War and the people that were lost. And to show a kid dead was pretty powerful stuff.
Did you start directing first season?
No, I started directing second season.
And how did it come about? For you, was it a natural progression? Did you ask? Did they offer?
Well, what happened was Bill Blinn, who has always been my godfather in so many ways. He was our head writer, executive producer, and the crew was so in love with me. At first, they were so challenged by me and annoyed with me, but then they got to where they loved me because I always had these ideas. I was prepared, and even if I didn't know how I wanted to shoot it, I had ideas about camera moves, and I challenged the DP in ways that he had not been challenged in, I don't think, his whole career. So the crew was like, after I was directing for all these directors who didn't understand dance, the crew was like, we want Debbie, we want Debbie. And then Bill was like, yeah, let's do Debbie. So they gave me my first episode, and I remember it. It's called Lisa's Song. It was about a ghost that was in the school that Valerie's character was seeing in the image in the mirror. And it was incredible. And it was the first time the crew ever wrapped early. I mean, one day we wrapped at like 4 o'clock. They were like, yeah. But we weren't rushing. I just knew what I wanted. I always knew what I wanted. As a director, that's still, I think, one of the things that people like about me a lot.
As a fellow actor, was it smooth for the other actors for you to be directing them?
Yeah, the actors were used to me directing them in all the production numbers, so it was nothing new, and they certainly knew my ability. So, no, everybody was rooting for me, and then it turned out to Debbie, how many do you want to direct? You can direct as many as you want. So the choreography did pay off, and my agent wasn't right. I was right. He was wrong.
So you were the first, if not, I think the first African-American woman to direct primetime television, scripted television. Were you aware of that then? That's pretty groundbreaking.
I'm not aware of it now. Is that true? I don't even know that.
That's what my notes say, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's amazing, and I'm proud to have that title.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't
well, now that you know, I mean...
Now that I know.
I'm surprised you don't, actually, because, yeah.
Well, you know what? I've been on that train that's still moving forward, that I don't get to rest on laurels. I don't get to look at anything. I mean, we don't know. Just like, hey, when my sister, Felicia Rashad, won the Tony Award for Best Actress, we didn't know she was the first African-American woman to win that award. We were sure that Ruby Dee had won it. But, hey, I'll take that little star on my forehead. I like that. That's nice.
Well, you told me about growing up in Houston that, there was discrimination there even in terms of getting, accepted to a ballet academy or a dance academy.
Yeah.
How did you find it when you were doing Fame in terms of women, especially women of color, having those kind of leadership roles, directing and, choreographing and things like that?
I found it still to be very tough. And still. When I started directing Fame, I remember my first day wondering, what was I going to wear? Did I need to, man up and wear some macho-looking clothes? Or, will they pay attention to me? And, I ended up wearing my pink overalls, some lace socks, my perfume, and they loved me because not that I'm a woman or anything, but because I came prepared as a director. I went to work as a director, not as a black woman, not as a woman, but as a director. But often you don't get looked at like that. I mean, there's so many... I went on interviews for so many incredible movies because everyone was so impressed by my work, and they just wouldn't hire me. And one time they stopped and said, you know what? You're the best one for this, but we're not going to hire you because you're a woman. And I went, okay, thanks, but I'm not going to cut off the breast, so I'll just have to deal with it. And, I would think that my talent an ability would fill a quota. I'm black and I'm a woman. But I think because I come out of that world of theater and come out of the world of social and human injustice, I have no fear. I really don't have any fear. And that might be off-putting to people, that I can come in and express myself clearly, that I can say this is how I want to do it. And it's not looked at as great. Some people go, ooh, she's a bit much, or maybe we can't handle her, or I don't know. Sometimes I think it's not worked in my favor, but in the long run, at the end of the day, I'm still here and I'm doing so many great shows now and so many things. It's all good.
Well, I was going to ask you about, if you experienced discrimination and sexism, and what you said is like it was pretty blunt, it sounds like.
It was blatant and blunt. I mean, I remember the day when, I won't say his name, grabbed my butt. And I was choreographing. He was a director. Mm-hmm. And he grabbed my butt, and I was trying to explain to him how I designed it for the camera. And he grabbed me on the ass. He said, don't you worry your little self about the camera. I collared him. I collared his son of a bitch. And I said, you know what? You, first of all, take your hand off of my...
Miss, how would you feel if you are hard at work and someone, a colleague, feel that they get to handle your body the best way they see fit without permission? Let me know, how would you handle a situation like that?
Ever touch me like that again. If you don't get the shots out of my head, you're going to be standing here all day trying to figure it out, and you will never direct again. Now what? Well, honey, next thing you know, I was calling, he said, Debbie, call, I was calling action, cut. Oh, he learned his lesson. I did not wait for anybody's trial or go to court. I straightened his ass out right then. But, that comes to haunt you. Then they may say, oh, she's tough.
But you became co-executive producer. Was that around that time?
No, that incident happened early on when I started on Fame. And I never did go and cry to the executive. I didn't cry to anyone. I took care of it. Gangsta.
Yeah. So what were your added responsibilities as a co-executive producer?
Well, that was incredible. Becoming co-executive producer was because I was able to manage people. I was able to communicate, keep things moving on time, oversee what was happening in scripts and production. I was doing all the things I'd always done, but I was now being credited as a producer.
So the show ran about 5 years?
It was actually 6.
And it started on network and became syndicated, didn't it?
Yes, it was the first show to be first-run syndication.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it end? Did it just run its course? Or?
It ran its course in 6 years. It ran its course. I mean, we went through so many things. I mean, I was married. I got divorced. I had a child. I left the show for a while to go work with Bob Fosse when I was so angry with them for trying to fire my dance company because they wanted to be paid properly. At the end of the day, it was all more positive than not. We changed the world's image of what the arts really are and what they take to succeed in. We created performing arts schools around the world. I mean, in South Africa, places like so far away that you don't even think. We had an impact that is still a footprint that is still, collecting dust from its stamp.
Well, Fame definitely lives on. In 2003, there was a reality show based on Fame.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Well, that was fun. MGM called me and said, Debbie, we got this idea. And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, you're really the face of Fame. I said, I can be, in a way. I think Lydia and Leroy were the most popular characters. Everyone was well known, but they were the two. Mm-hmm. So they asked me to be the Earth Mother, to guide these young 20 or so contestants through this triple threat. And I said yes, and it was fun. It's interesting. We did the first show And the head of the network called and said, "That's the best opening number I've ever seen. I want that same number every week." I said, "Well, no, I can do something else." He said, "No, Debbie, I mean it. I want that same number every week." And it became our theme. It was work. It was a Kumo D song, work like a doctor. When I rock the mic, you got to like the way I operate. Everything happens.
And you had a role in the newer feature film of Fame.
Yes.
Did you play the same character?
In my mind, I did. I ignored what they said, that my name was something else. I said, "Child, what are y'all tripping about? This is Lydia Grant. That's why you came to me." That's why I said yes, because I felt it was homage to the old and the new, and Lydia Grant was a real part, So whatever her name was, I said, "It's Lydia Grant, but she's married now."
The response to the film was nowhere near to the original. What do you think? What's your take on it?
Well, it wasn't a surprise. We were hopeful about it and we tried to promote it, but they never went edgy enough. Mm-hmm. And they were still trying so much to pay homage to the original. They should have just done an original, totally different story. They were still telling the story that the movie told, but they were splitting up characters. The Coco character was split up between two characters. A young girl that was an actress and a young girl that was a singer. So she ended up in somebody's trailer having to take her clothes off, but they never even had her go naked. It wasn't allowed. They wanted a different rating. I think they, honestly, if I had been creatively a voice on that movie, I would have said, let's just go to the next story. Right now, there's so much we're dealing with. Not just a kid committing suicide, but there's AIDS. There's so much going on right now.
So why do you think, 3 decades later, Fame still resonates with people?
I think Fame still resonates 3 decades later because what we did was so pure and it was honest.
Let me know in the comments, what do you feel is the reason why the TV show Fame still resonates with people?
It was really honest, and those stories were always so compelling. The dancing and the singing were just revelatory to the audiences. They hadn't seen anything like that week to week to week. I think we were such an inspiration. And it's what I'm finding, because I've opened the Debbie Allen Dance Academy, and I have women who are bringing their kids to me because they watched me on Fame, and they want their kids to have some of that. What is that world of discipline, of dedication, of passion, of, self-exploration? That's what Fame gave the audiences, and they welcomed us into their living room, and we belong to them. So right now, I'm telling you right now, if I go to New York City right now and walk the streets, invariably there'll be 2 or 3 women running out of a deli. There'll be a man on the street that will give me an umbrella or put his coat down for me to walk across a puddle of mud. And it's because Fame left them with that kind of heart. It made them think that they could do something in the world that maybe they were told they couldn't do. It gave people that sense of accomplishment, that it was possible.
And more than that, didn't it influence arts programs in schools all over?
We create,
and still does?
Well, yeah. I said this earlier. We created performing arts schools all around the world. And it's partly why I opened the Debbie Allen Dance Academy. Because for years, everyone said, "Miss Allen, where's your school? I want to bring my child. Where's your school?" And I'm like, So finally, I did it.
So you became a producer and director of A Different World, which was a spin-off of which Cosby Show? The Cosby Show?
The Different World was a spin-off of The Bill Cosby Show.
The Bill Cosby Show. Okay. And how did you come to that show?
Well, I graduated from Howard University. I had already done so much work as a director. I was directing Family Ties. I was doing Quantum Leap. I was doing so many different things. And I was just being invited by Gary David Goldberg to become one of the main directors on Family Ties, when I got a call from Bill Cosby. There were problems on the show Different World. Those of us that were watching it that knew historically black colleges could see it, but there were problems going on behind the scenes and on the product itself. And he said, you know, I want you to go in there, dust your broom, and clean out anybody that you want to go. He gave me full authority to fire anyone, hire whoever I wanted, make the show
Show A Different World. Tell me, from the first season to all the other seasons after that, we know of the people that actually left and the people that stayed. Do you think Debbie Allen did a great job getting rid of those certain people, or do you feel that some of the people from season 1 should have stayed to season 2 and 3 and so forth and so on? Let me know in the comments.
relevant. Get in there, Debbie. And then I sat down with Tom Werner, Marcy Carsey, and Karen Mondebach, and they said, yeah, we really do want you to come in. So I said, give me every episode. And they said, you want to see every? I said, absolutely. I want to see everything you've done so I know what the game plan is. So I went in. I didn't want to fire anybody. I didn't fire anybody. I didn't even want it. I didn't take a credit as executive producer. I would just be producer, director. And I thought I would even bring in some other directors. And then Bill said, no, you're directing every episode. I said, really? He said, yes, we got to get it right. So for almost 2 years, maybe, I directed every episode. It was his edict. That was his edict. But I went in there and rustled up the writing team and shook up the actors and added people and got them to talking to one another, because that's what I had learned from Gary David Goldberg. The genius of Family Ties was they would have a read through and open the floor and let the actors say how they felt, not just do what we tell you, we're the writers and you do what we say. So I was trying to find that commonality, because a sitcom that multiple camera is as much the closest medium you're going to get between theater and film, because you have a live audience, which becomes a character. Because when they laugh, you got to hold. You can't just keep plowing. You got to stop. And it's theater and it's film. So I went in there and wow, it was tough. But I went in there and got us to doing stories that were relevant, freed the writers, freed the actors, got in a lot of trouble, was always called into the principal's, what I call the principal's office, always getting called into the principal's office. But we changed that show. That show became relevant.
Let's talk some more after we change.
Debbie Allen interview, part 1 of 2. Now, let me know exactly what you think about the first part of this interview in the comments below.
Starting.
Okay, so I'll just ask again, what was the original premise of A Different World?
The original premise, as I understand it, was really to do a series that would have an inside look into a historically black college, you know, the life of the school, what happens, the students, the teachers, and ultimately, hopefully, encourage young people to go to school. I mean, Bill and Camille have always been very big on education. They donated about $10 million to Spelman for this. And, you know, education is big for them as just personally as parents.
So when you came on board, did Carsey Werner and Bill Cosby say, this is what we want changed? Or did they say, Debbie, you change it?
When I came on, they were like, Debbie, fix this. Make it relevant. Make it more real. I mean, it's like there was no hot sauce on the table. I mean, if you did a yeshiva university, they don't have some matzo ball soup somewhere, then what is it really about? I mean, who is this about?
And you told me that they gave you kind of the power, the authority to make pretty much any changes you wanted to do. What was the first thing you did?
Well, the first thing I did was really try to communicate to the writers that we needed to connect with the actors and vice versa, because that was the missing link. If I could solve that problem, that would be more than halfway home to making the series relevant and even more dynamic. That would be it. And that was not an easy task, because when I came on, there were people that were, I sat down with a fellow executive, and he was telling me, well, I want to bring in this person to direct and that person, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I was like, sorry, but I'm going to be directing every episode. And they were like, what? I said, it's really Bill Cosby's idea. It really was his idea for me to be hands-on all the way. So it was, I didn't want to relieve anybody of their jobs and their, ability to help, let's solve this problem together. But it was a bit of rearranging for them to understand who I really was and what my task was going to be, and that I really had the authority to do whatever.
Did you have other goals at the beginning, or did you kind of discover your goals as you made the changes?
Well, what it was I looked at every episode, and I also saw a lot of foolishness. I'm all for laughter, and buffoonery is okay, but to an end. What is it about? We don't have time to do an episode at a black university where their assignment is to take care of an egg. No. We're dealing with serious issues out here between education, poverty, joblessness, pregnancy, drugs, gangs. We have a lot of issues. And this is a historically black college, and we want to put ourselves on a level with other colleges. Like Howard University is the Harvard, it's always been the Harvard to us. And we have professors that are so dynamic and so incredibly gifted that they've been trying to extract them to go to these other big Ivy League schools, but they are committed because there's a purpose here. We have a purpose. So I needed to do that, but I also needed to bring in the life. There was no fraternity life. I mean, how do you do a historically black college and you don't have fraternities and sororities, stamping around? Not even. That's not even real. Every Friday at Howard University, you go up on the hill and it's a song fest. And it's an homage right back to African culture, the boot dance, all that stamping and stomping that comes right out of it is cultural DNA that is still happening, and the whole idea of gathering. So relevancy, cultural aspects, and new characters. So I wanted to get some new characters on the show. And that's when I discovered Cree Summers, and it was not just Cree, there were other people, but also how do we use Sinbad? How do we use him? How do we use the Jaleesa character? Jaleesa is the older student, and she needs to show more maturity. I wanted to change how she looked. Her dresses were too short, too many fingernails, too much hair weave. I wanted to get rid of some of that hair weave, some of those fingernails. That was one of the first things. So I found Cree Summers, I found Charnel Brown. I wanted to find, who's the young Whoopi Goldberg on this show. Already had Kadeem and Darryl Bell and Jasmine Guy. I had brought her to Los Angeles in Fame. She was my baby from Fame. And when they put her on the show, I was like, ooh, Lord, they getting ready to find out. And she was such a dynamic character. But how do we use these stories? Who is really Whitley's boyfriend? I remember sitting down with Susan Fales, just challenging her that whoever can make her laugh is who can get her. Not the most handsome guy. He was wearing the flip downs and he was kind of looked at as kind of goofy. But no, that boy is more intelligent. He can make her laugh. He can get her. And it ended up being the whole, match for the whole series between him and Whitley and their parents and the mothers. And so my edict for myself was to make it relevant, make it cultural, and just go deeper with the characters and see what's going on, you know, behind the masks.
So Jasmine Guy played Whitley, right?
Yes.
And it was Kadeem Hardison played Dwayne
Wayne.
Right, okay. So why did Lisa Bonet, who was one of Cosby's daughters on the previous show, why did she leave the show?
Well, you know, this was very interesting. When I first took over the show, one of the first things I did was meet with Lisa Bonet. And I adored her from The Cosby Show. I adored her. And she...
Would you have liked it if Lisa Bonet would have went through the many different seasons and the many different episodes of A Different World?
secreted to me that she was actually pregnant. She had married Lenny Kravitz, and you know, I guess Bill had his feelings about that because he was possessive in a way. I mean, they were his on-camera wife and children, but they still were his. I mean, the way he was with Felicia too. I mean, that's a whole nother story. She told me she was pregnant, so I said, well, listen, we have to go tell him. So I said, honey, put some shoes on. Don't come up there barefoot. Let's get your best dress. Let's comb your hair. And let's go see him and let's tell him together. So we got dressed. We went up there. And, ooh, he could see us coming. He saw us a mile away coming. He could see us coming. And he sat there and looked at us. And I said, well, we have some things that we want to tell you. He said, what is it? Are you pregnant? And they were like, oh my God. He said, well, what's so different about it? He looked at me and said, you were pregnant. Your sister got pregnant. And so now what? And I said to him, I explained to him how I wanted to use it on the show. Because that would be a great thing to see a girl who's upper class kid having a baby, not married because she didn't want to be married. And the girls could root for her. I was explaining all that we could do. Well, honey, that was just, I was blowing smoke and I didn't know it. So he listened to all of that. I got put in place as the new person in charge. We started talking about stories. And then immediately, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later, he says, you know what, Debbie? No. She's pregnant. Denise Huxtable is not pregnant. Lisa Bonet is pregnant, not Denise. So no, you can't have it. No, we're not going to do it. No. So he took her back. I was so mad at him. I wanted to take her, but I understood. He just wanted her back. I thought it would have been great to see that storyline, but so she left us to go back home. And then she ended up getting married on the show over there and, you know, whatever happened over there. So she left the show. And then I also had Marissa Tomei. Marissa Tomei was the only white character on the show. I was excited by that because I was looking at it as the opposite from my own personal experience. I had been the only black kid in a ballet school, the only black kid, the only So what must that be like? Because when I went to Howard University, we had one white student, talented, and that would be very interesting. I had even pitched the idea of Dwayne Wayne taking her home for Thanksgiving dinner and her mother being furious that there's a white girl in the house. Ooh, let's just see the other side of racism, because it does go both ways.
Comments. Would you have loved to see an episode like that? Can you imagine Dwayne Wayne's mother having an attitude to her son dating a white woman?
Let's be clear, it does go both ways. But we didn't get to do that.
So tell me a little more about Bill Cosby, the Bill Cosby that we don't know, who's behind the scenes, an executive.
Bill Cosby is incredibly visionary as an executive. He is looking at what is missing on that palette called network television and saying this is what is needed. And he knows, and he knew then. And he was in power because his show had cornered the whole network. Every show. NBC was number one for how many years? Because of the Cosby Show? He had power and he was determined to use it to a positive. So Different World came on right after Cosby. That was the deal. We had to keep it going. They would start and then we catch the baton and can we keep it going? So as an executive, he was incredibly open. He was also very supportive. A Different World, we did the first show about AIDS on television. The very first. They were all at my house the day that Magic Johnson came forward and revealed he was HIV positive. I never seen young men cry like that. I'm talking about Darryl Bell, Kadeem, everybody, even Glenn Turman, everybody. And we didn't know this was going to happen. Sometimes I would do that, cook food for them just so we could come together. And that's what happened on that day. So I looked at the writers and said, guys, we got to do this. We got to do this story. We have to. It's saving lives. So at first we were going to do one where Magic was actually going to come on the show. But then he became gun shy, and you have to understand that. So we
how would you have felt to see Magic Johnson on the TV show A Different World? Me personally, I think it would have elevated the show just a little bit more. Let me know in the comments. I want to know your opinion.
did our own story. And you would have thought we put Jesus Christ back on the cross. The way, advertisers pulled out. It was the first time advertisers ever wanted to see a show. I said, okay, are we going back to that now where the advertisers are really in control? Network was just furious. I mean, I remember talking to Warren Littlefield. Warren, why are you screaming at me? Do you know if we save one life, then it's worth it? We need to put it out there. Kids are dying. This is not just some, dream. This is our nightmare. This is real. So we wrote the episode, and I got Whoopi Goldberg, who's a friend of mine, to come and play the teacher. And I knew she was going to win the Oscar that year. They didn't care. They said, we don't care. I'm like, come on, guys. It was in those auditions that I discovered Jada Pinkett. Jada Pinkett Smith auditioned for the part of the young girl that was going to have AIDS. My God, she was incredible. She was incredible. And that's why we didn't hire her, because I said, no, I need her in the show. No. So we hired Tisha Campbell, who was amazing in the part. And Bill Cosby stood up for us. They wanted to yank it. They said there's going to be no advertising. There's not going to be this. And Bill called me and said, well, Miss Trash, you got it going this time. I said, yep. He said, well, you know what? We're going to keep the show. And I don't know how, but it became our highest rated episode, even without advertising support. That Whoopi was there. They knew something was up. Everybody was. We couldn't say what the show was. I couldn't even show a condom. I couldn't even have her take a condom out of her purse. I could point to the purse. I couldn't even show it at that time. That just tells you how dramatically television and the world has changed. And they've opened their minds, and they have to. It's not even a choice anymore. It's something that had to happen.
So you went on to deal with issues including date rape, apartheid, interracial relationships, discrimination. What kind of battles did you have to go through to get these shows made?
There were battles doing these shows that were not only relevant but topical. I mean, Murphy Brown gets on the cover of Time magazine for having a baby out of wedlock on television. We satirized the presidential campaign, Clinton against Bush. Mm-hmm. We were like, I don't know. I've never been so demonished. I mean, I was admonished. You can't do this, you can't do that. It was clever. It was on the level of anything Saturday Night Live would have done, or in Living Color, which was so popular at the time. It was so funny. But we were like, you can't do this. And I said, when the students on a campus are quiet politically, the nation is dead. If we don't have an opinion, if they don't have a voice and something they have to say, they're dead. So I fought for it because I came out of Howard University. We were the first school to take over the university. We were before Kent State. But they didn't send the National Guard into us. Our parents were out there with boiled eggs and orange juice begging us to come out. We never thought for a minute that you could die for speaking up in this country. But people at Kent State died. And I am now the head person in charge. I know that. We're going to do something that's going to have an impact. And this was funny. It was funny. It's funny stuff. All the candidates now became female, and all the wives were now men, meaning it was Jill Blinton that was running. And her husband was, we were satirizing all those relationships. It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
So was that the key? I mean, they used to promo episodes of sitcoms that were about serious topics as a very special episode. But there were a lot of very special episodes on A Different World. Was humor the key to getting it through, to getting those done?
I thought so. This was a great platform. Yeah. You have to have a platform from which you spring. I learned that early on. If you don't have a platform, then you might as well keep your mouth shut. You got to have some way to get in that can ease it. It's like a doctor. Put on the glove, put a little jelly on him, just don't go do something. Humor was a great key, and we used it so well. But time after time after time, we just were scolded for it and I was brought into the principal's office. I remember when we were doing the episode about politics, Warren Littlefield called me on the phone. I was in the bathtub. And he said, the gloves are coming off, Debbie Allen. I hear you're having press conferences and just shitting all over NBC. I'm like, Warren, what are you talking about? I'm in my house. I haven't talked to any journalist. I don't even know what you're talking about. Somebody had said something to him that infuriated him. And I said, Warren, we're trying to do a good show. We're trying to do a good job. He and I came up at the same time together. We had the same sensibilities. And then politics got involved and people, and I don't know. It became more difficult to do what we did. And by the time A Different World went off the air, we went off so unceremoniously, so quiet into the night. They kept changing our times. Nobody knew when we were on, and then we just disappeared. But we're back on now. I mean, they can't play it enough.
Aside from what you told me about the actors, or trying to support the actors and have their input in terms of their characters, how did the actors respond to the changes?
The actors were so happy about the changes. When I got there, they were so happy. They were like, they almost were imprisoned. It was like I freed them to find the comedy. I remember telling them, stop it already. Because any good director, not even great, any good director, from where I sat, and I have at this point worked with the best. I've worked with Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse, Donald McKay, Steven Spielberg. I've worked with some of the best. And the best ones cast people that are right for the role and bring something to the role. Not just be a little cookie card cutter, just say the lines. You've got to bring something to it. You've got to come and live it. So I was trying to get everyone to live and see. And we would improvise sometimes downstairs and find things. We found something one time between Dwayne Wayne and Whitley where there was a sequence where he was thinking about her. The writers had him thinking about, what it would be like to kiss her. So I did it in slow motion. I had them come in slow motion and kiss, play some really crazy music. The audience laughed for 5 minutes. We had to stop the show. It was so funny. Well, that was a gift That was a gift. I'm not trying to give writer credit. This is a gift. And so we had to shoot that scene 2 ways because it wasn't written that way. Because there was a particular writer who felt betrayed that we weren't sticking to what was written. The version that was the funniest one is the one that went on the air. But that's our job to do that. That's what we should do. So the actors were happy. They felt finally there was someone who could hear them. And so I started asking the actors. The first thing I did was write 10 storylines that you would like to see. And I gave it to the writers. And some of it actually got into the show. These were gifts. This is the collaboration. There is no way to success without that collaboration. Not in theater, television, film. It's just not, it doesn't work.
How do you feel about where a different world fit into the culture of the time? I mean, was it groundbreaking, do you think?
I thought it was incredible. A different world tripled the enrollment of historically black colleges and colleges, raised the level, but historically black colleges tripled the enrollment. I mean,
Went to college because of this TV show, A Different World. Let me know in the comments. Was it a historically black college or whatever college you went to?
it was like I had found lightning in a bottle twice. Fame created performing arts schools all over the world. A Different World tripled the enrollment. That's quite a success story. Forget a rating. That is something that really matters. And we did something that mattered. And it's still on now, which is so great because when you see it now, you still relate to those stories.
And you took the writers on a field trip to a couple of black colleges, right? Morehouse and Spelman. Was that effective? Did they come out of that experience in a way that they were able to produce?
Yeah, I think it was important. It was important for them to go on a field trip because some of them had not really been. You know, it's like if you're going to do a movie, or for example, when I started directing Grey's Anatomy, what is one of the first things that I did? I went to the hospital and observed 3 hours of a bypass surgery. Mm-hmm. And I saw the doctors talking about their dinner engagements and arguing about something on the floor in the middle of this life and death crisis. Mm-hmm. You do your homework. That's my thing. If I don't do anything else, I will do my homework because I like it. I like knowing. So that was good. And they appreciated it.
Phoebe Snow sang the theme song first season, and
Yes.
then Aretha.
Aretha.
The second season.
Yeah.
Was there a method to that? Was there a reason behind that?
Well, we wanted to up those credits. We wanted to change it. Karen Mondebach actually had the idea, Debbie, you could do this. You could make it more like a video. You know, make it just more now. Because the world of the video, MTV was booming. So we jumped on that train. I called Aretha. You know, because Aretha won't go anywhere, honey, unless you put her on a bus. Child. She ain't flying nowhere. But she was happy. She said, I'll do it, Debbie. She did it. She sang it. It was incredible. And then I designed the whole thing with a motion control camera so that I could just flip them and have them doing so many different scenarios in one setting. It was great. It was great.
So how did Carsey Werner react to the changes, the pretty dramatic changes in the show, taking on the serious topics?
They wanted these changes. They were in the meeting with me after Bill Cosby had called me on the phone and said, this is what I want you to do. And then he said, you're going to have a meeting. And I sat with them. And they knew I came out of Howard University. So this was not going to be like something fly by night. This was going to be based on real experience. And the writers, you know, there was so much richness there that they could pull from. And a lot of them were happy to do it. It wasn't like they didn't want to do it. They had not been guided in that direction prior to my coming.
Was there a show or a topic that you really wanted to do that NBC just put their foot down and you never got to do?
No, we actually did. One of the greatest shows we ever did was, I think, our season opener for the last season. It addressed the LA riots. And we sent Wayne and Whitley, who had gotten married now, on their honeymoon, and they were stuck in LA in the middle of the riots. And I'm telling you, it was hilarious. I mean, I did some very irreverent things. I had this woman coming out of a store, because everybody was stealing, all that stuff was happening. We had one, the woman came out of the store with, I think, a case of alcohol or something, and she said, I had her say, free at last, thank God Almighty is free at last. And it was like just showing how people had lost their minds. Yeah. Then we had Roseanne and Tom as looters as well. I said, come on, what is this? We only have black looters? White people were looting too. So they were okay with it. They were mad about it until it became Tom and Roseanne. And they came over and they had a good time with us. So that was a very controversial episode.
With Roseanne and Tom on A Different World. Let me know if you remember that episode and what did you think about that episode?
Very controversial.
So how are the ratings when the show got, when it's dealt with serious topics? Second season on, how did the ratings, did they respond?
Yeah, they were good. Ratings were really good. We were doing good.
There was an episode in 1991 that dealt with the Persian Gulf War. What was the premise of that?
Well, the whole thing came about because we were on the set and it was my birthday, the day that the Persian Gulf War broke out. And I stopped rehearsal. We had to stop because we had young people who could be called in. We had young people who had families that were now going to be affected. So it was important to address the Persian Gulf. Should we be there? Do we go over there? This is the conversation that we're having right now. That episode could come on tomorrow and it will be relevant to what is happening in the Middle East today. Do we go to Libya? Do we help the people? Do we let them just, deal with the genocide of a mad, despot or ruler that's been there generationally, for 10 generations? When does America speak up? When do we stand up? That's what it was about.
And Jasmine Guy wrote the episode?
Jasmine Guy. And this was another thing. Jasmine, this was another thing that was good about me coming there. It encouraged them to see themselves moving forward. Because Jasmine had been in New York, had seen me on Broadway on the stage, I had let her be a dancer on Fame when she still was underage. We just didn't tell. I said, I don't know that. Are you 17? Okay, you're fine. She watched my growth and development, as did Jada Pinkett Smith, all of them. So I was kind of an image, an icon for them of where they could get to. And it was good for us to give them that ability. You want to write? Come on, write on this show. You want to direct? Come on, let's do it. And that possibility became more real. And she wrote it.
Do you have a favorite episode or one that at least has special meaning to you?
Oh, goodness, that's a tough question. I think if there's one episode that has special meaning to me, it would be the AIDS episode. Because not only was it the challenge of getting it done, and for anyone that's producing television, sometimes you have to do what's right, not what makes everybody happy. But then if you do something that's really, truly right and terrific, you can change lives. That episode will always resonate with me, that episode.
What episode got the most public response or fan response? Or
controversy?
Yeah.
Might have been the Mammy episode. The Mammy episode, Mammy Dearest, we reclaimed the image of Aunt Jemima, because there's a lot of misconceptions about who Aunt Jemima is. Aunt Jemima was the mambo, that is the sorceress, the earth mother in the culture. She was the one that was given information about the Underground Railroad. She was the one that might even be poisoning some of the most evil masters to help people survive. Mammy was very important, and we needed to reclaim her and redrape her in that gingham fabric in her African beautiful self. That was such a difficult episode because we actually used blackface, and Cree Summers, it was difficult. They were young. They had no references other than disdain for that kind of caricature, but they didn't understand why it was important to portray it. So when Cree Summers had to put on the blackface, and she was in tears and she was upset, and she says, "I can't stand this. I can't stand looking like this." And then I remember Charnel Brown, who is the beautiful black young little goddess that we hired. Charnel said to her, "Why? I look like that every day." It turned into an internal, dramatic schism that ultimately became very healing.
You had quite a number of very prominent guest stars who came on the show: Jesse Jackson, Tupac Shakur, Diane Carroll, Lena Horne. Did these people want to do the show? Did they feel like, because of the importance?
All of the guest stars you could possibly think of that came on the A Different World TV show, which one was your favorite? For me, I would have to say Criss Cross.
Some of the issues. It was a show they wanted to be involved in.
I think all the guest stars wanted to be on our show. Patti LaBelle asked me to be on the show. I went to her concert one night, and she and our friends from back in my gypsy dancing days in New York, and she had just lost her sister, and her concert was so emotional, so moving. And she says, "Debbie, could you do something for me?" I said, "Patty, what? What?" She said, "Can you put me on A Different World?" I'm like, "Girl, shut up. Are you kidding? You're on. When can you come?" So I ran back with that news, and we decided to make her Dwayne Wayne's mom, and that was incredible. And that was the start of her getting her own show and a whole lot of things. But the people wanted to do the show. When Lena came, that was amazing. Lena Horne had said no to everyone for years and years and years and years. And she said yes to us because she believed in what we were doing, and she loved it. And she wanted to be a part of it. And it was so interesting because when she came, it was the week we were celebrating AFI and Elizabeth Taylor. And every studio in town wanted her to sit at their table. But she sat at my table. It was great.
I know this is a hard question, but do you have a favorite guest star, or at least one that really stood out in an episode for you?
Well, let's see, we had Jesse Jackson, Voter Registration, Patty, we had Lena. I would have to say the guest star that really stood out the most to me is Diane Carroll as Whitley's mother. Because Whitley was really the most popular character on the show. And for us to get a glimpse into who she is and why, Diane was incredible as her mother. Diane Carroll was amazing. And we'd all loved her when she did Claudine and so many wonderful things that she'd done over the years. We had idolized her in Julia. That was the first black woman to ever have her own television show that I remember seeing as a kid. Diane Carroll as Whitley's mom was the most outstanding, I think.
Why do you think Whitley and Dwayne were such a popular character, a couple on the show?
You know, Whitley and Dwayne were so popular on the show because the chemistry between them was so right. Whitley was so annoyingly little princess and femme fatale, but wanting love. And, you know, Dwayne was so bright and intelligent and determined to become his own man. And the two of them, though so many people, I'm telling you, when I first said that's who needs to be together, thought it was ill pairing, it was what everyone would love because it made Whitley more vulnerable.
When it came down to the love aspect of being together, girlfriend, boyfriend on the show, I honestly thought Dwayne Wayne and Kimberly would have been a better match. But when I seen how Whitley and Dwayne Wade, the chemistry between the two, I loved, that they got together. Let me know in the comments. Did you want them two to get together, or did you see something different?
It made her more accessible that she would be with him. And it spoke to millions of kids that this guy could get that girl. You know, you don't have to look like Laurence Olivier to get the prettiest girl.
When you shot the final episode, did you know the show was over, or was it you did? Was that emotional?
It was emotional because twofold. It was the last episode, but more importantly, we had just been kind of unceremoniously told goodbye. Mm-hmm. And with our audiences as well. So, I mean, I can remember cheers going off and this one going off and the fireworks, and we didn't have any of that. And I thought we deserved it.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Honestly, looking back, I don't think I would have done anything differently.
So what do you think the lasting impact is? The show's on still, right?
That's it.
The social impact and the cultural impact.
Well, that the show is still on speaks to the value and the relevance and the great work that we all did. The writers, the actors, all of us. That we produced something that deserves to be in a time capsule.
Now, you've directed many other episodes of other shows. Mm-hmm. I want to mention 2 or 3. Just mention the title and just give me a real quick comment or your feeling about them. First, Family Ties.
Family Ties was incredible for me. It was the first time I ever directed multiple camera. And I was trying so hard not to like doing it. But I did. It was infectious. It was great. It was a time when
I know and remember the TV show Family Ties. Let me know in the comments, what was your favorite episode from that TV show?
you stayed up all night with the writers. The director actually stayed up all night with the writers. And by the time Gary David Goldberg said to me one more time, point well taken, but we're going to do the point well taken. But I said, you know what, y'all? I'm going home. Y'all just show me what it is tomorrow. It was great, though. It was a great cast chemistry. I loved doing that show.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Fresh Prince, I directed the pilot, and Will Smith was just a bowl of cherries. You just wanted to eat him up. He just was yummy.
Will Smith. Now, he had the kind of rapper thing going on. This is a real big first move for him. Did you see in him what he became in terms of a big star?
Well, I saw Will's willingness to try anything and his appetite and his ability to bring such joy. He brought a smile on everybody's face every time. You know, and that Alfonso Ribeiro, I stood up and fought for him because, you know, they wanted to fire him after the pilot, during the pilot. I said, guys, this is the series. This is the oil and water. This is it.
Do you think the show would have lasted if they would have fired Carlton Banks, Alfonso Ribeiro? Do you think the chemistry of the show would have went as long as it did? Let me know in the comments. I want to know your opinion.
The two of them, this is his nemesis. Come on. Carlton, the two of them, come on. That was the show. That was the whole show, the two of them.
So what do you feel like you contributed as the pilot director for that show?
I think I could contributed a sense of family, that I fought for Alfonso Ribeiro, that I stood up for what... Sometimes you have to hold people hostage to their own ideas because they don't trust. I didn't cast the show. I walked in and it was cast. I think I might have looked at... No, it was cast. And they didn't trust their own idea. And I had to fight with them. And so if I contributed anything, it was keeping that family together, making them understand that this worked. And this was going to be the show.
Everybody hates Chris.
Oh, everybody hates Chris. What a delight. What a fun show to work on. The whole cast was incredible. Ali Leroy, the head writer, executive producer, and Chris Rock, he would come in.
What's your favorite episode of the TV show Everybody Hates Chris?
And out. I had a glorious time on that show. I had a glorious time on that show. I could be so creative. You know, they were open to me, you know, cinematically portraying whatever it was visually I had in my head. You know, sometimes I wanted camera verite, you know, handheld, or when I did a real extreme close-up of somebody's mouth. I mean, all these things were valid for that show. They loved my creativity, and I loved that show, and the writing was so good and so funny, so relative and wonderful, just wonderful, great, the best.
You mentioned Grey's Anatomy. You did your homework.
Yes.
How was the experience of directing that?
Grey's Anatomy was, I'm telling you, it was amazing. It was traumatic because, you know, when you're coming...
I mean, what was your favorite episode of the TV show Grey's Anatomy?
And even if you're experienced, and I consider myself very experienced, and you're still the new kid, you know, at 50 some years old, you can still be the new kid on the block, honey. So I'm walking in, and I've never done the show before, but finally they go, well, let's try this Debbie Allen. And it was a great challenge for me. And what I realized, which I've realized before, is at the end of the day, if you really can communicate as a director, that is partly the most important skill. If you can communicate to the cast and make them understand why, if you can communicate to the crew and make them understand how we're going to do this. And I brought an energy, I think, to the floor that I don't know, might have been missing. Energy. I mean, we laughed a lot. I kept them. I walked on the set, and what did Patrick Dempsey do? He started doing jetés and singing Fame. I'm like, stop it. Patrick, stop. They're going to fire me. You're going to get me fired. They're not going to take me seriously. But you know what was good? It was great because he was always in a good mood. You know, even there's always challenges on Grey's Anatomy. There's a lot of challenges, but I would keep them in a good mood, in good spirits.
Among the many balls you've juggled is the Academy Awards. You were brought in 1982 to choreograph musical numbers, and you came back several times. How did you get that call?
I did the Oscars 10 times. I consider myself the artistic director of the show, of the musicality of it anyway, because it was, again, not unlike Fame. Debbie will determine. It was what I could think of. I was brought on by Gil Cates the first time, and I had a little bit of a swagger about it because I'm like, child, it's about time y'all called me over here. Y'all had all these other tired children. It's about time. So they had this big idea. I had already done an incredible number on Motown that told the history of dance, of music, and through dance. It was incredible. And I think, in fact, they wanted that because they wanted to do, it was the 100th, I think it was the 100th anniversary of film. They wanted to do the history of. So they thought I could do it. And I could, and I did. So I had so many ideas. Oh my God. Because, the movies, I go to the movies every week. I still go. Every week, not just to eat the popcorn, although this is an attraction. I like the big screen. I'm a fan of going to the movies. So, to me, the core of every movie is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and there's a war. I'm talking about in some of there's somebody fighting somebody. Even in Feifel, American Tail, the mice against the cats, there's somebody fighting. So I will never forget the first time I sat down with them, and I was full of all these ideas, and I was talking about the battle that, we would create this movie, and we would actually pay homage to great movies on the way that would give us music, footage, all this stuff that could be so rich, and we'd shoot footage. I mean, I was in it. And then I said, we'll have the backdrop of a war. And then somebody screamed, oh my God, for God's sake, they took a woman. I don't know where it was, somewhere in the Middle East. I'm like, when have they not taken a woman? I don't know what happened. Something happened. I said, name a day when it doesn't happen. In Africa, in the Middle East, in Israel. Name some place. It's just not something we need to run away from, is what I said. So Gil Cates said, yeah, let's do Debbie's idea. So he actually assigned me a new editor and let me go for it. And I actually had people going in and out of the screens. It was incredible. And then the day before we did it, he said, okay, he looked at me and said, kid, what's plan B if this doesn't work? I said, honey, there is no plan B. We are committed. And it was incredible. It had everybody just going crazy. So then they asked me again, and I would, create all these things. I know that my work inspired Disney to go into the theater. I did Beauty and the Beast on stage. I did Aladdin on the stage. I did all this stuff on the stage. I took cartoons and made them live. I took songs that were obscure. I will never forget when Maria de My Soul was nominated. And they were like, what? I said, look, okay, it was from Mambo Kings. And I was a fan. I had seen the movie. I said, look, we'll get Celia Cruz. And they said, who? I said, okay, let's get Placido Domingo. They said, yeah, Placido. I said, we'll get Arturo. So I put together a thing. I said, they won't even know what the song was by the time I finished. The number almost got a standing ovation. It was so hot. It was so hot. They kept asking me. And I was surprised and I think they kept asking me because I would come up with these great ideas. I was creative. The last one I did was Crouching Tiger. And by the time I did that one, I felt like, maybe it's time, because I had such a battle about what the set was going to be, because I didn't want it to be literal to what the set was in the movie. The minute you just do what the movie is, you're dead. You can't. I said, I want it stylized. So then the designer calmed down. He had a meltdown, and then he calmed down and he designed something that worked brilliantly. 10 times. I probably have the record for that too. I don't know. You go look and tell me. Tell me, do I have the record? You know what? It was interesting because I was so praised for doing it. The Aladdin number that I did two. The 2 songs were nominated. I did all this stuff, and people loved it. Then after the second time, then they started ragging me. Oh, she's back again. Why are they dancing on the Oscars? They started writing nasty things, and then finally it was announced there would be no dance on the Oscars. And I'm like, okay, fine, sorry, duh. We're the only culture in the world that separates our arts. Everywhere in the world, if they're celebrating dentistry, they're dancing and singing about it. Nobody's trying to, sit there and grind teeth all day. But they said there was no dance, but what did they do? They had to have a kick line, honey. They had to do Blame It on Canada a spoof, and they had to have a kick line. They just couldn't do it without us. I was so happy.
You won an Emmy on a show, a special called Motown 30, What's Going On.
Yeah.
You choreographed the number African-American Odyssey. Was that special for you?
Yes. African American Odyssey was the number that I think inspired the Oscars to hire me. It was the number where I went through the history of Motown and the history of us as a culture, African American culture, and I showed the parallel, the then, the now. You know, I could I showed when the Supremes were dancing, the African step that it came from. It was incredible. It was breathtaking. It stopped the show. We had a standing ovation. And I was so proud of what we accomplished. Because there they were talking about, it started out with the boys arguing about who created hip-hop. MC Hammer, da-da-da, and then I walked out there as, Miss Dance Diva. I said, who created it? I said, sit down. It came from Africa. And then we just went through the whole thing. We went through, capture, slavery, captivity, plantation, gospel, jazz, blues, all of it. It was incredible.
Why was Amistad an important project that you brought to Steven Spielberg? You were a producer on that feature film.
Amistad is probably, in so many ways.
In the comments, have you seen the movie Amistad? And what was your thoughts of it? Me, I absolutely loved the movie. Beautiful work.
One of the most important things I've ever done in my life. And at the same time, it is definitely the most challenging thing that I've ever accomplished. It took me over 18 years. I was at Howard University in a bookstore, and I picked up a book called Amistad. It was a collection of essays from black intellectuals, academicians, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why is it called Amistad? Then on the front of the book, there was a one page that told the whole synopsis of the Amistad case. A slave's ship, African captives found on the coast of America, landing in the Supreme Court, pitting two presidents against one another. I'm like, where the hell was this story? I was an A student in history. Why wasn't this in my books? I was offended. I was appalled. I was enraged, and I was ignited to do something about it. And I knew we needed to make it a movie because the history books would never catch up in time. We needed to make it a movie so people would understand America's still who she's trying to become. And this image of this hero, Singbe, the way we say it, but Singbe, Pierre, is something we need. I've had every man in my family, my father, my uncles, all in the armed services. My father's buried in a veteran cemetery, as is all my uncles. They all served. My cousin died. Why is it every time I see a movie, so many movies about war and this, the black men are somewhere in the corner shuddering and crying and blah, blah, blah. I said, we need this. So I was determined to tell this story. And this was my love for my father, my grandfather, my uncles, my cousins, all the men in my family and all the men that helped build this country. I did it for that and for us to finally face our shared history and look at it. It's one of the most difficult conversations right now to have in America about slavery. So Steven Spielberg, his son, and my son were in the same school. He had eaten some of my yellow grits over family breakfast, and I didn't approach him, but I said, I know I could, if I could just sit down with him. They said, you can't have a meeting with Steven. I was like, oh, please. So then finally, after I went through his executives, they said, okay, you got 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned to an hour and a half later. And I was so ready. Oh my God, after so many years of desperation and disappointment, going into people's office where they go, oh, is it a musical? I'm like, oh, okay, what? Kill the white people? That could be a number. I don't think so. No, it's not a musical. Steven Spielberg grasped this idea. It was fresh to him. It touched him. And every time, every question he had, I could answer because I had done my homework. I had done my homework. I knew this like the back of my hand. Where was the abolitionist movement at the time? Where was Congress? Where was laws? Slavery, blah, blah, blah. And we made this movie. And God bless Steven Spielberg. I love that man. I love that man in a way that he will never even really understand.
How do you feel about the extreme popularity of dance shows now? Dancing with the Stars. So You Think You Can Dance, where you were a guest judge.
I'm back on it now.
Comments. What was your favorite dance TV show? There was a few of them mentioned here, if it's one of those, or if you know of a whole different one.
How do you account for this interest and what most networks turned down initially?
Didn't the networks turn it down? I pitched a dance show 6 years ago. They said no. Anyway, these shows are so popular because when I give a lecture on the history of dance, I say this, and I really do believe this, that dance is the most original art form. Before man could write a note or play an instrument, we were stamping our feet on the ground. We were jumping, we were spinning, leaping in celebration of birth or in request for rain. Dance is the most original art form, and everybody has the spirit of the dance in them. So these shows have evangelized dance, have reawakened the world's spirit to dance, and it's just a blessing.
How do you feel about your experience directing Polly and then acting in it with your sister, Felicia Rashad? And you played sisters in that.
Well, we played sisters in Old Settler.
I'm sorry. That's right, Old Settler.
So you want to know about the Old Settler?
Sure, yes. Okay.
So Old Settler, Felicia and I worked together first on a big Disney movie called Polly. And I think I thought then, and I still think now, I'm her best director. And she said she had showed me this piece, The Old Settler, and she had bought the rights to it, and thought we should make it into a movie. We could do it together. Then I had this opportunity with PBS Presents that they were going to go back to making movies. But they wanted things that were more contemporary. But I said, guys, this is a no-brainer. Me and Felicia together. It's small. It's intimate. It will come in on budget. It will be amazing. So they said yes. So Felicia and I played opposite each other, two old sisters in Harlem. And she falls in love with a younger man who ultimately abandons her and leaves her waiting. And I'm so grateful that he did, because I did not want to be alone. And it was so well received. The reviews were incredible. And we're still waiting for somebody to say, yeah, let them do it again. So we're actually working on something ourselves. You come up out of Texas, you come out of the time we came out of, you learn to just do it yourself. That's what we're doing.
So you first directed her as Aunt Polly in Polly?
Yes.
Okay. And that went well?
I gave Felicia her first movie of the week, Aunt Polly and Polly, because Bill Bland, who is the executive producer, head writer, Fame, had been brought in to adapt it into a story about a young black girl. And he said, there's nobody but Debbie Allen that could make this work and do this in this kind of time. I mean, there were like 7 dance numbers, musical numbers. It was musical. So I got the job. I said, hey, how about Felicia? Because Keisha Knight Pulliam was going to be Polly. I said, let her be on Polly. And she was thrilled to do it. And it was great. It is just now coming out on DVD, I understand. It's just now being released. And people have been asking for it for years. It is one of the best things Disney ever did, I think.
What do you have? What advice would you give to an aspiring director or someone in the performing arts who wants to become a director or a choreographer?
The advice I would give to someone who wants to be a director or choreographer, I would say, go somewhere and really train. master one thing and see how it can open the path to so many other things. I trained as a dancer and I was a choreographer before I became a director. My sensibility about movement and where the eye goes and moving the camera was so developed as a choreographer first, but translates beautifully into the language of directing. So it's go somewhere and really train. And if you're going to be a director, take some acting classes so you know what it is to be an actor, so you know what you're asking people to do. Some of the best dancers do not make good choreographers, but you have to know the feel, you have to know the language, and you have to understand how to go deep inside for dance and for acting. You have to know how do you build the circumstances. I was privileged to train with Uta Hagen in New York as a young woman. And when she told me perfect, that's when I stopped going to class and I said, it's time to go to work because I understand it now. Let's go to work.
And how would you like to be remembered?
Ooh, how would I like to be remembered? I'd like to be remembered as an artist who I'd like to be remembered as an artist who mastered many different worlds and who gave herself to the world and to young people.
Thank you, Debbie Allen.
I'd like to be remembered as a best-selling author, someone that can take my writings and anybody else's writings and put it to movies and TV shows that can help people transition from one level to the next. Let me know in the comments, how would you like to be remembered? This is Debbie Allen's interview, part 2 of 2. Let's have a conversation.